Hello, my name is Elise Dewsberry, and I am the Artistic Director at New Musicals, Inc. We are the producers of the web series So Proudly We Hailed. And I'm here now with Robert Mitchell, who is the subject of our episode titled A Single Vibration. Welcome, Robert. Now, I know from the bio that you sent us that you worked in military aviation throughout your military career, serving not only in the United States Marine Corps, but also the United States Army. In the Marines, it says here, 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing, Cherry Point, North Carolina. You maintained the safety and survival systems on the fixed-wing C-130 aircraft during operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm in the Persian Gulf. Wow. And then in the Army, in the 101st Airborne Division, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, you worked on the rotary wing CH-47 Chinook helicopter during multiple deployments to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And over the course of your military tour, your combat tour and military service, you earned several medals, including the Kuwaiti Liberation Medal, the Southwest Asia Service Medal in the Navy, NATO ISAF Medal, Global War on Terrorism Medal, several Army Commendation Medals, and a Humanitarian Service Medal for community outreach in the Pacific. All of that is just amazing. Robert, can you talk to us a little bit about what made you decide to enlist in the Marines after high school, and then what you did after you left the Marines, and then what was it that influenced you to sign up again, but for the Army the second time?
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Elise. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and appreciate you and all the folks at MNI for this opportunity to tell my story. I joined the Corps right after high school, right after I graduated in 87, 88. And honestly, I felt I wanted to do something more. Wasn't quite sure. But of course, my folks wanted me to go to college. And I did sign up and do all the application and everything. But these recruiters showed up at my workplace, and the rest was history. And I got to tell you, it was probably the best decision of my life, to be quite honest, because to see the world go from coast to coast, all the way around the globe, at the government's expense, of course, is pretty amazing to see a lot of different things and experience different cultures and all that. Cherry Point, North Carolina is where I my first duty station in the Marine Corps. I worked with the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing. And then they sent me off to Okinawa, Japan, where, and I was so young, I was like 19 years old over there in another country. And I was just excited to just be traveling and to be doing great things, thinking about all my friends that were still, I was in New York at the time, and they weren't doing anything close to anything that I was doing. So that was awesome. So I spent about 5 years in the Marine Corps, came back from Okinawa a year later. Within a few months, went straight to the Persian Gulf to support Operation Desert Shield. So we didn't have time to really breathe from our 1-year tour in Okinawa. Spent about 8 months over there for Desert Shield, then Desert Storm, came back. And by the time I was done, I had about a year left on my contract, finished up my year, then used my GI Bill to go to school, get my undergrad in my BA in media and communications. Because to be honest, Elise, honestly, when the recruiters first approached me, I wanted to be a military writer. And it's so funny. I remember the Marine recruiters were like, no, we don't take scribes. We want killers and people like that. It's funny. I look back at it now. So I said, okay, you got anything in aviation? And that's how I ended up in aviation, because, I like flying machines. But it was still the burning desire to write was still in me. It never left. Wherever I'm doing or whatever I'm at in the world, it never left. So I used a GI Bill to get my degree in media and communications. And I embarked on a new career as a journalist in New York. Pretty tough market, as you could probably imagine. So I covered everything from, county news, local, city, state government news, and went off to work for a publication in Hoboken, New Jersey. And fast forward up to 9/11, 2001. Right after that is when I came to the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I'm at now. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I never left. So I've been here ever since. And for some reason, and I know it's weird, I'm much older by the time I got down here. I'm married with a kid in the house and all that. And there was a pull when I saw soldiers and Marines going in support of, right after 9/11, in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and so forth. And of course, I'm in my late 30s by then, but I still felt like I wanted to go. And he was like, no, you shouldn't go. You shouldn't. But I signed up. I found an Army recruiter. And it was perfect timing because they needed soldiers. And I was like, where do I sign? and off I went to 101st Airborne Division down in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And within 6 months of signing up, I'm in Afghanistan. They were not playing. I was like, wow. Went there, came back, sat for a year, and then went back again. So I spent 2 years of my life, 4 seasons, 8 seasons, Christmases, holidays in Afghanistan. I feel like sometimes I joke I have dual citizenship. I've been there so many times, but definitely a great experience. Learning experience, and probably the best thing for me in both branches, and just working is the camaraderie and the togetherness with folks from all over, from everywhere. And I tell anybody that. Now, I know the military is not for everybody, Elise. I know it's different. People have different opinions about it, but for me personally, it's the best experience I could ever imagine in my whole life. And I'm still serving, working in federal government, supporting veterans, taking care of what we call the greatest generation. So a lot of the veterans that I work with, or I take care of, are World War II veterans. Not many left, but there's a few Vietnam veterans and Korean War veterans. So it's to me, at least, it's like a lifelong calling, and still going, working with you and Scott and the good folks at NMI, telling the veteran story. So if God has a purpose in my life, I'm sure this is it.
That's wonderful.
Sure.
Your episode that's called A Single Vibration, it centers around a time that you were a helicopter mechanic. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that job was like as part of being on the ground, as part of a deployment, and in the area that you were, and working on helicopter repair and maintenance?
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound pretty exciting. It doesn't sound too sexy, helicopter mechanic, but it's a job, and it's a very important job. There's the pilots, and they need to use their aircraft to transport troops and equipment back and forth. So it's important that we keep those birds flying, keep them up and ready. So we worked. The first deployment was to Bagram, Afghanistan. So that was in the northern region. And we worked 12-hour days. I remember the first 6 months, we worked 12-hour days, 7 days a week for 6 months straight with no day off, until later on, then they kind of eased up a little bit. But I worked the night shift, so I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So while folks are getting off work, I'm going into work. It's dark and it's cold, and we're out on that flight line, just making sure, checking systems, changing the oil, servicing the aircraft. If a pilots have a particular issue, maybe the throttle or stick, something didn't work quite right or whatever, then it's our job to go out and look at it. And if it's something, another specialty, then we would refer another shop to it. But we were always going out. We probably had about, I don't know, maybe 20 aircraft at the start, probably more than that. So it was always work, and through all seasons, whether it's hot, cold, rain, snow. And one time it did snow really bad and you couldn't fly at all. The flight line was just covered with snow, so we had to wait around. But we lived in what they call bee huts, kind of. It reminded me of like a shack, if you think just a wooden, square. A bunch of them lined up, and they were all kind of just built haphazardly, kind of, and that's where we lived. And we had showers that were like, it reminded me of truck containers. If you ever see those containers on a shipping yard, very similar to that. And we did just cut a hole in it, and we lived in there for the whole year. And then again, when we went back, so pretty rough, but doable, and since I've deployed before and been in combat before, I was honestly, relative to my Marine Corps, that was probably a step up, but I'm kidding. But yeah, definitely a meaningful work.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing that you did all of that, Robert. Interestingly enough, I know that you are also a writer. As you mentioned a moment ago, you got your BA in Media and Communications and spent some time doing business news reporting. And according to your bio, you're the editor and co-author of Inside Afghanistan, Sunny Yang's Sketches in the Combat Zone, and also the recently published Cat and Jan, which is the first in a series of books for preschoolers. So can you talk to us a little bit about how your military experience might come into play with these writing projects that you're working on?
So inside Afghanistan, Sonny and I, we became really good friends. We were, we're like brothers to this day while we were deployed to Afghanistan. And Sonny's a phenomenal artist, a phenomenal sketch artist. I've never seen anybody do what he does in real time the way he does it. And it's his passion, it's his calling. And I've got to know Sonny very well. And while we were deployed, he sketched probably about 200 illustrations of soldiers and mechanics and all kinds of people doing things, just capturing it, because to pass the time when he had downtime. And then he said, let's publish a book. And he approached me, and he knew I was a writer. And he's like, I know you like to write, and I know you write these newsletters for the company. You do this, you do that. So we put our heads together, and we put together that book. And but I know in my experience, when we deploy, a lot of times companies, battalions, the unit will have like what's similar to a yearbook that you would get from school, from college, to remember to memorialize your time that you were there, you were serving. And so they had that. And so he's like, well, let's try something different. So that book, we published it, we produced it and published it while we were deployed. And we sold probably about maybe 100, 200 copies while we're still out there, at $50 a piece. So that was pretty decent just for a start, and sold more along the way. In terms of my military experience, Kat and Jen, to be honest, that's a dedication to my mom, to be quite honest. My mom's name is Jan and her sister is Kathy. And they were big inspiration to me, especially in writing and just in life in general. And my Aunt Kathy gave me my first keyboard because I love to play the piano. And her and my mom were very close. My mom has like 8 sisters, but her and her sister Kathy were really close. And I've always heard stories and got to know her. So that inspired that book. And I'm still producing other works as well in that series, but that was the first one. And it just happened to coincide with when we started doing this project with NMI. So
amazing. Amazing. I want to circle back to something that you mentioned earlier too about what you're still doing. I understand you're living in Maryland with your family, and you are a public affairs specialist for the Armed Forces Retirement Home, also known as Old Soldiers Home in Washington, D.C. Can you talk a little bit about that job? And you did already talk a little bit about why it was that you wanted to do it, but talk a little bit about how it feels to be giving back by taking care of the soldiers there in the Old Soldiers Home.
Oh, I gotta tell you, Elise, that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I have a passion to write and to tell the story, tell the story of other people, right? And particularly veterans and military folks, because they're all family to me. When I talk to the men and women at the retirement home that have done this, every time I see them, I thank them for their service. And I remind them, I never get tired of saying it, without you, there would be no me. I tell them that all the time. They get a nice chuckle out of that, but it's really heartfelt. Looking out, there's so many soldiers, sailors, Marines, coasties, airmen, and there are no what do they call them? The Guardians in the Space Force. Not yet, anyway, but they will be, I guess, at some point. But I didn't imagine I would be in a place like that. And I did work took care of single soldiers in Fort Campbell. My last assignment before I was discharged, I did work in some kind of morale and recreation type of capacity. And the work there helped me get the current job at the Armed Forces Retirement Home. And at least it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, these folks have stories, they have experiences that are just incredible. And there are a lot of firsts. I mean, I love history. And there's the Military History Channel. I know folks know that, but some of these folks at this retirement home are featured there on that channel. There's a guy named Paul Grimes. He's like did some fantastic radio or some kind of research he did on the North Pole. So they have a glacier named after him. And there's another guy who was like one of the first Navy divers. I'm like, wow, I can't. What? It's just. It blows my mind, at least it really does. And just to be in company with these folks and just to embrace them. And I met, I don't know if you heard of the Montford Point Marines. So, and, we had Jim Crow and segregation back, in our history. And the Marine Corps was the last branch to integrate, right? They held out, and like they do with everything else. They're pretty firm. So the Montford Point Marines was the first basic training for Black Marines in the Marine Corps, the first one. And I met a guy that was actually part of that troop, that first basic training Parris Island set of Marines to go for African Americans. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, by about 95. But just to meet him, and he did get recognized by President Obama. He was alive before he passed. So that was pretty incredible. But it's just remarkable things like that, at least, that just like, wow, I never imagined I would be here engaging with these folks with living history like this, just, I can't say, I mean, it's just a beautiful thing.
It sounds, Robert, like you have enough enough stories there to be writing for the rest of your life if you wanted to talk about the stories of the people you work with. That's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, cool,
On a slightly different tangent, this particular piece, of course, you were working on with us is a musicalized version, and you probably hadn't had the opportunity to do that sort of thing before. Can you talk a little bit about what it felt like to turn your story into a musical, and what it was like working with your lyricist composer, Michael Fink? And what do you think the music adds to the story?
Oh, wow. Wow. I was just thinking about that. It was just amazing. To work. Michael, a phenomenal songwriter. I mean, when he first played the tracks for me, I was like, wow, I was speechless. And I'm usually not speechless. I was like, wow. I said, you took the story to the next level, the stratosphere, just by, you can feel that. And you know how music really hits your heart and your mind, really pulls something out of you. But, it was just, I was writing down, ideas and thoughts, memories that I have that I've experienced. But to see, Michael to take that to where he took it, I was like, how did you do that? You're a magician. Unbelievable. So Michael and director John Levitt and Bachir Sylvan, to see all of these beautiful creatives take something that I just jotted down and take it to the next level. I'm like, wow, Elise, and NMI. I mean, I'm so glad I even got in touch with you guys, or I think it was through BME Connect, actually. But I'm just, wow. But those creatives, especially Michael, and Michael's from New York. Well, I'm from New York, so we have that connection. He's on the subways or wherever he's going. But, and then I think it was a time when Mike went down to Florida to do something, to work on a project, and he still made time for me and the project and all that. So that was just a beautiful thing. I mean, wow, I could feel it here, Elise. I mean, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Robert. I'm excited to see the episode when it comes out, which will be in the new year. And I hope everyone who watches this interview will make sure that they get a chance to see the episode. It's called A Single Vibration. And before we wrap up, though, I wanted to just give you an opportunity to tell us if you have anything that you would like to say about how important it is to share these military stories, both for as a message to other veterans, but also to civilians, about how important it is for us all to hear about these stories.
Oh, yes, at least sharing these stories does a lot for veterans. Sometimes, I mean, we always hear, thank you for your service. I think it was President Bush that started that, and support the troops and all that. And with these catchphrases that we hear on commercials and all that, but to hear a story directly from the veterans who've actually lived and experienced that, I think that is incredibly important to what we do and to what you guys do. So that's a beautiful thing. Just getting it out, and to other veterans as well, because of course, our brothers and sisters in arms, a lot of times they don't know that they have a platform where they can share their stories and tell everybody about what they've experienced, and also their families, military families and veterans and people who maybe not serving now, but served in the past. And it's good to just share that. And because a lot of people just don't know. A lot of people don't know one thing about the book, the Inside Afghanistan book. And so we did an interview in Kentucky on a local news station down here about the book. And and I remember writing the press release for the book and letting the reporter know that, these stories, it might not seem very exciting, but it's how we live over there. And a lot of times when you watch the media, you watch CNN, Fox, or whoever, you get one side, because they're trained to report stories in a certain format. And I know that being a reporter, I know how that's done. But see, this book and our stories from us directly will kind of give you, oh, wow, that's interesting. There are people like us. They're living day to day like us. They're going back. Yes, we're doing the same thing, just in a different place with a different mission. So Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much. I appreciate so much this interview, and I really want to encourage people to go see A Single Vibration. And I do want to thank you for your service, but even more so, thank you for sharing your story, because it's very important. So thanks,
Wonderful.
Robert.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you so much.